Okay, Amanda LaPlante here of Get Real to Heal. And I wanted to hop on and let you guys know that later today we will have the episode that was recorded this morning in its entirety. Really encourage everyone to hop on and check it out. This was an amazing interview. Honestly, it brought me to tears several times. A woman that I very much admire and respect, Michelle Jewsbury. She's the author of this book, But I Love Him, a true story of love, pain, and domestic violence. She joined me on the show and shared her personal experience overcoming domestic violence and how she's paying it forward in the world. And I just really want to encourage everybody to hop on. We will have the show in its entirety later today here on Facebook in audio format. And I was moved to tears several times during the interview. She's just a really powerful force. So please tune in and check that out. Look into her wonderful work through the nonprofit that she founded, Unsilenced Voices. And of course, Giving Tuesday is coming up. If there's an organization that you could give to, I think that would be the one. And then also check out her great work on MichelleJewsburySpeaks.com. I'm sorry, Michelle Jewsbury Speaks. She's a fantastic speaker, and I wish I had half her skill at this moment after all the technical difficulties that I've had on this end. Yeah, so thank you again, Michelle. Really appreciate you. Everyone stay tuned, and I want to again thank our sponsor, AFC Urgent Care of Brentwood. We all know that it's flu season, and AFC Urgent Care is located right across from the City Hall in Brentwood, and they can diagnose and treat the flu and do a whole lot more for you there. Actually, I've been in once recently and had a great experience. So I just want to thank them for the good work that they're doing in the community, especially during cold and flu season. And if you have any questions or want to find out more information about AFC Urgent Care of Brentwood, you can go to their website, afcurgentcare.com/Brentwood, or you can call 314-731-6265. I want to thank them again for their support. And again, thank you, Michelle. I see she just popped on with a comment. A really amazing human being doing great work in the world. And so yeah, tune into that episode. It was really powerful. Thank you all for watching and bearing with my technical difficulties today. We'll get it figured out next time. Happy Thanksgiving.
The views and opinions expressed by the following program are those of the host, guest, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station or the Webster Rock Hill Ministries, its management, or other host or underwriting sponsors. Programs presented on KWRH-LP are for educational and entertainment purposes only. Views which are presented are for educational purposes only and are not intended to treat, diagnose, or claim any cure of disease or condition.
This is Amanda LaPlante, and you're listening to Get Real to Heal on KWRH-LP 92.9 FM. I am excited to have Michelle Jewsbury on the line with me today, phoning in from hopefully sunny California. Michelle, how's the weather there?
It's actually really bad. I'm actually calling in from Pahrump, Nevada, and it was snowing in between Vegas and Pahrump. So
wow.
It's crazy weather.
Oh, man. All right. Well, it's a little gray here, too, in Missouri, but 'tis the season.
Yeah, 'tis the season, for sure.
For sure. So I'm excited to have you on the show today. I've been reading your book, But I Love Him. And for anyone that's tuning in on Facebook Live, I've got a copy of the cover up on here so that you can check that out. And, of course, you can always follow this and other episodes of Get Real to Heal on facebook.com/GetRealToHeal. Michelle, you've been through quite a journey, and I want to start actually with, just tell us a little bit about your journey to get to where you are. First off, you've done some incredible work even before what you're doing now, which we're going to talk a lot about. But you were in international philanthropic work prior to the journey that you're now on.
Yeah, so my very first mission trip was, let's see, I think it was 2014, and I went to Kenya as my first mission trip. And then from there, I went to Guatemala and then India, and then I was vice president for a nonprofit organization called Young Vision Africa, and that was working to help kids in school in Sierra Leone. And then, lo and behold, what I went through, I then volunteered on Skid Row at the Downtown Women's Center for about 6 months, and then it's propelled me to where I am now, running the nonprofit organization Unsilenced Voices, where we help survivors of domestic violence and sexual abuse in Ghana, Sierra Leone. We're expanding to Nepal and the LA area.
And it's amazing, amazing work that you're doing. And I wanted to start, prior to this work, just because, it sounds like you were such an accomplished individual on the surfaces, and to all outside appearances, everything was going right in life, right? You were doing good in the world. You're the strong woman that's getting out and doing good for others. And yet behind the scenes, you were dealing with a struggle that few will ever really understand.
Yeah, that's why I wrote the book, because a lot of people don't understand domestic violence, and they don't understand how strong, independent women can get trapped in abusive relationships. And that's the primary reason why I wrote the book, because I want people to understand that it's not just lesser affluent or different types of women, that more affluent, more successful women actually get themselves trapped. And when you look at, say, even the political system, in politics, a lot of the women who you look at as your saving grace have been involved in domestic violence, and oftentimes they stay quiet due to what the public could think, what people would say, et cetera, et cetera.
So how common is domestic violence? Like, what are some of the stats? I know you've got some incredible stats that you've done some research on that are included in your book. Give us an idea.
Yeah, so in the United States, it's roughly 1 in 4 women and 1 in 11 men experience domestic violence. Internationally, in Ghana, the statistics in the books say 36.7% or something like that. But when I was talking to the chief director over there, they said it's probably double. So we're looking at almost 70% of the women in Ghana experience domestic violence. And I would see that statistic goes across all countries, developing nations or third world countries.
I mean, it's a staggering statistic to really, when we think about that and think about what a difference we could see in the world if we were all to be really paying attention and tuning in to this issue.
Yeah. If people would speak up and take a stand for something, I really I don't care what you take a stand for, but if you take a stand for anything, we would not be in the problems that we're in right now, including domestic violence, sexual abuse, sex trafficking, and then many of the other problems that we're facing all over the world.
So how did your own personal experience with domestic violence begin?
Well, in 2012, I ended up reconnecting with an old friend of mine, and we'll call him Paul. And Paul pursued me. He sent me flowers all the time. He wanted to date me. He wanted to take me out. And I was real hesitant because I had moved to Los Angeles to pursue an acting career. So I didn't want a relationship at the time. However, he was persistent, and he swept me off my feet. And I remember that very first date we went on, and it was awesome. We went down Rodeo Drive. We got manicures and pedicures and facials and massages, and we had an amazing meal. However, 4 short months later, my head ended up going through the drywall, and I didn't even realize it was domestic violence. I literally turned back to see the hole in the wall, and it was what I thought was, wow, I've got to patch that. I didn't think, well, that shouldn't have happened to me. I thought, well, we just got into an altercation. He got upset, and he pushed me too hard. Well, when you fast forward that again to October, which is roughly 10 months after we started dating, I received my first beating where I should have died, and I was beat for over 4 hours. I remember being able to break free at one point and running down the road as fast as I could. And I could hear him behind me catching up, and he caught up, and he ended up taking me back to the house and continuing. And by the time he was realizing what he was doing, I was black and blue and bloodied, and he had put me in the shower with him next to him and rinsed the blood out of my mouth and off of my body, and then laid me in bed next to him. And a lot of people ask at this point, well, why didn't you leave? Because that makes more sense. Yeah, it does make sense, but the problem is there's a cycle in domestic violence, and it goes from walking on eggshells to a big blow-up, and then the apology stage. Well, that night I drifted in and out of consciousness, and when I woke up the next morning, Paul was staring right at me, and he began to cry. And when I mean cry, he was sobbing, begging me for forgiveness. I love you, Michelle. I promise I will never do it again. And you so badly, as a victim, want to believe him. And I believed him, although it didn't stop.
And there's so much in what it's just, I can't even imagine, Michelle. My heart goes out to you and anyone else who's had to endure something like this. And there's a few points in what you were saying that I know that people are listening, and I'm sure you come across this all the time, and they're going, wait, what? And so, at the moment that your head goes through the drywall and the first time it happens, I think so many people sit out there and go, oh, well, that would have been enough for me, but they don't understand all of the things that come after in terms of the cycle and the emotions that are attached and the forgiveness and all of the other things that come in, right?
Yeah, there are so many things that come in, and people don't get it. And the people who have been through it, I mean, now that I'm teaching and I'm coaching and I'm speaking all over the world, I see hundreds and thousands of men and women coming to me, and lots of men as well, saying, I was involved in domestic violence. I used to be beat. My girlfriend used to hit me and throw pots at me and throw plants at me and scratch me and et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people don't realize that women can also be abusers to their men, and along a whole nother spectrum where we talk about LGBTQI. So it's so many people experience this. And in my case, my boyfriend at the time on me, there are so many women who go through domestic violence. And there are so many who stay quiet, and they stay quiet because of the cycle, because they so badly want to believe that he's going to change, because he consciously wants to change, but there's something inhibiting him from doing so. And my theory is that hurt people hurt people. So he's hurting, and then he takes it out on the people closest to him. And unfortunately, that's girlfriends, wives, children. So
now, is this, and I think what you said there is key. Hurt people do hurt people. I fully believe that. And, looking back at their history, how did they grow up, and looking at it, what are the cycles that they're then carrying forward and repeating? But is this something that, therapy can fix? I know you talk a little bit about that in your book.
I do. So there's a program called HEALS, HEALS, and I don't know that much about it. But if you're asking me on a personal level, I do believe that it is something that can be fixed per se. I think that because the abuser is going through their own struggle, when they go through therapy or whatever type of therapy that is, it could be writing therapy, it could be movement therapy, it could be actual, psychological therapy where you go and see a shrink. I think that you can work through a lot of your problems. The problem that I see is that a lot of the abusers don't want to admit that there is a problem, so then they won't go through the steps in the process in order to help themselves. So then, therefore, the domestic violence is continued.
And I think that's a really, really valid point. I know in my own mental health journey, because I've been through quite a long one myself, it took me really coming to grips with the fact that I had to work through some things, and I had to accept that I needed to change. And that's not an easy thing to do. And especially in a situation like this, where people are going through such explosions and then trying to come to grips with it the next day and really being in disbelief that they could even behave that way. It's mind-boggling to someone who's living in that consciousness.
Yeah, it is mind-boggling. And you're in awe. And when you're going through it, you not only do you hope and wish that they change, but that you really think that they're going to. You thought that it was a fluke. Maybe they were triggered. Maybe something happened at work. Maybe they drank too much. Whatever that case may be, you really do feel like, oh, that's not going to happen again because that's so out of the ordinary. But the problem is it does, and it will continue unless they get help.
When you look back on the beginning of the relationship and before the first instance and the second instance and the third instance, and you look back at the person, I know in your book you talk about certain behaviors that have been identified in abusers. What were the warning signs for you, or were there?
Yeah, there's red flags for sure. And when I first started dating Paul, one of the main red flags was that he took full control of everything that we did. So when we went out to dinner, he would order for me. And I'm a strong, independent woman who can order my own food. However, I thought that was kind of endearing in the beginning. Well, he was possessive. He ended up moving the relationship too quickly. So, roughly 3.5 months into the relationship, he was like, you should move in. We should move in together. And we didn't just move in. He ended up isolating me. I ended up moving about 3.5 hours away from where I was currently living. He would tell me all the time that going to church, that my association wasn't good enough and that I should stop doing it. He also then said that he would, take care of my bills and then get me a new car. And really what that was is it's controlling. We ended up selling my car and he leased me another car, but then he was in charge of when I could and couldn't drive the dang thing. So I didn't understand, like I said, when you're going through it, but there are so many red flags, on your first date. Make sure you watch how they talk to the waiter or waitress. And if they don't show respect, if their friends around them are saying, oh, I watch out or be careful with this one, really open up your ears and pay attention to that, because I didn't pay attention to that. And it led me down a path that was very destructive for over 4 years.
And I think that what you brought up is so many times, I've dated people like that. Thankfully, it didn't go as far as it could have, because now I look back and it's like at the time I thought certain things they were doing were caring, but they were really controlling. And and it can be confusing to navigate that whenever you want to see the best in someone.
Yeah, it definitely can, and there's definitely a fine line. So, just always have your sensors up. And I think that that's very, very important. When things are moving too quickly, when you have a gut feeling, listen to your gut. I remember I was walking through a crosswalk with one of my girlfriends, and I was telling her about my new boyfriend. And then this feeling, this immense feeling came over me that this is wrong. This isn't something that I should continue pursuing. And I swallowed that fear, brushing it off as, well, maybe I'm just scared to get into another relationship. Maybe I'm scared to pursue a romantic relationship at this time in my life. Well, my intuition was warning me prior to me getting involved in this abusive relationship. And, thank God that, God stayed with me during this time. He carried me through a lot of this, but I didn't listen to him in the beginning.
Yeah, it's, man, and I want to point back. So, I think so many times people think of abuse as being, a lot of people are familiar with verbal abuse. I know I'm very familiar with that in my own upbringing in life. Physical abuse, but, you also talk about in your book, it's physical, sexual, emotional, financial. There's so many different ways in which an abuser can take control and really, just abuse their victim.
Yeah. Financial abuse is an abuse that is not, it's becoming more recognized. So what we mean when people say financial abuse is that I wasn't allowed to work. He controlled all of the money. So when I finally broke free, I didn't have access to funds. So it was a lot more difficult for me to leave that situation, and for many, many victims out there, because they didn't have access to resources. Now, a year prior to me actually cutting things off, I started to save some money. I hid money away. You know, if he came home and there was money in his pockets, I would hide some money away. And that actually helped me be able to break free because I had something tangible in my hands to where I could leave. But there's a lot of people out there who go through their abusive relationships and their boyfriend or husband or wife, whomever it is, takes control of all the finances and doesn't allow them to have access to anything. And that's financial abuse. Another thing my abuser did is when we finally broke up, he was using my credit against me. So I had a credit score of roughly 780 when we first started dating. And he kept saying, well, why don't we add my name to your credit cards? We'll use all your credit cards and then pay them off every month. And you know, in the beginning, that made sense to me to increase my credit score. However, my credit score was already 780. So he used that, he leveraged that against me, and lo and behold, he didn't pay them off. So my credit plummeted after him and I split because I couldn't afford the $50,000 or $60,000 in debt that he left me with. So I'm now finally starting to come out of that hole.
Yeah, and and you talk about in your final notes in the book how he was able to pay his lawyer more than what you were able to afford, and because of that, the results of the court case, I have to believe, based on what I read, were vastly skewed in his direction. In terms of just he received a slap on the wrist, in my opinion, when it should not have been, of course.
Yeah, he did receive a slap on the wrist. He did serve a repercussion for the criminal trial. I can't talk a lot about it. However, he is serving a small repercussion for that. I'm hoping that this repercussion is going to make him become more aware of some of his narcissistic problems, some of his inability to relate to women in a positive way. You know, growing up, he had this tug and pull with his mom, and he really blamed her for a lot that happened in his life. And I didn't really understand it when I was with him, and I was just always there for him. You know, I love you, Paul. It's okay. You know, let's talk about this. But he used that as almost a reason to hate women. And I wasn't the only one that he assaulted. There was somebody before me and then somebody after me, and that's what you're reading with the final notes. You know, roughly about November of 2015, I received a message from a girl, and this girl's head just went through the window in our little bathroom because he put her head through it. And at that point, she ended up taking charge for her own life, and she decided to press charges. And at that point, I had to make a decision. So my final and last correspondence with him was an email that I sent him right before Christmas, so right around this time in 2015, saying, I know what you did. The DA has contacted me. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I think that we should just go through lawyers at this time. And that was my final breaking point when he put another girl's head through a window.
And I just, again, my heart just goes out. I want to double back to talking about the cycle of domestic violence. And I wondered if you could walk everyone through the stages again, just so that people can really get a better picture for what this looks like.
Yeah. So you get together, right? You're happy-go-lucky. And then all of a sudden there's a tension that starts to build. And you start to walk on eggshells. You start to be cautious of what you do, what you say. You don't want to trigger your partner in any way. And that's the walking on eggshells part. And then that actually infuriates him. And then there's a big blow up. And these stages could be 3 months, 2 months, 5 months, could be a year, 3 years, and then, 5 months, whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to be equal parts and equal time lengths. But then you walk on eggshells and then that big blow up. And that blow up could be sexual, it could be physical, it could be, emotional banter. And then from there, there is an apology stage. Now, like I said, that apology stage could last a year or two. I love you. You're amazing. You're beautiful. I'm going to do everything for you. We're going to be a wonderful family. And that apology stage is really where victims get and stay trapped, because you truly believe that the narcissistic abuser is going to change. And he actually believes it himself. But then tension starts to build again, and then you start to walk on eggshells. You don't want to trigger him. And then all of a sudden the blow up happens, and it's the cycle. It's a vicious, vicious cycle, and it goes around and around and around.
So, and I think that, honeymoon, tension, and then explosion. And it's so important for people to start to recognize that, there can be different lengths of cycles, but there is a cycle. And once you see that, it's, once you become clear on that, it's time to step forward. So what are some of the ways that you tell, for instance, the woman that called you, like how do you help people to take that next step, to take action?
So right now I've developed a 5-step system to overcoming obstacles and trauma. So it's not just trauma, but they relate. So the first one is realization. You have to realize what it is that you're going through. If you don't accept it, wow, I'm trapped in this, it's just like AA. If you don't accept that you're an alcoholic, you're not going to do anything about it. So if you don't accept that you're involved in an abusive relationship, then you're not going to do anything about it. Now, once you learn and realize and understand and accept it, then you have to go through and change your thoughts and your feelings, and then your words and your actions. So we'll fast forward to the actions part because we don't have very much time on air. But with the actions, you have to take steps forward, right? Which means that you cannot stay in that abusive relationship. You have to reach out to shelters. You have to reach out to centers. You have to get the resources that you need to integrate back into society, to integrate back into the workforce. If you have children, you have to figure out how to get them childcare. You need resources to be able to put them through school. So you have to make that next step, and those steps are very, very difficult if you feel trapped, and especially if you're in that honeymoon phase at that time, because then you're thinking, well, he's so great right now. I don't want to leave. He's wonderful. But then the cycle continues. So it's action steps that you have to take, and those action steps are leaving your abuser.
Michelle Jewsbury, I am so glad that you came on today and shared this journey you've been on, shared the good work that you're doing, and I'm so thankful that there are people like you out there in the world illuminating.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Amanda.
How can people get in touch or follow you online? And then I know you also do some speaking, and you've got a play that you've written. There's so many different ways you're getting out into the world. How can people follow you?
Well, first off, if you would like the 5 steps, a PDF file for the 5 steps to overcoming obstacles and trauma, text overcoming to 26786. And then from there, I'm at Michelle Jewsbury on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And then my nonprofit organization, Unsilenced Voices, is on all social media handles as well. And Giving Tuesday is coming up this coming Tuesday. And we are working with Global Giving, which is an amazing platform for Giving Tuesday for donors. And they're actually matching funds up to $500,000. So if you decide to give to an organization that helps combat domestic violence and sexual abuse, and now we're getting into sex trafficking, we're an organization to give to because we're ran by a survivor. We're ran by me, and I'm not taking any funds from it. So all of the money is going to our projects overseas right now.
Well, I want to encourage all of our listeners to again, follow Michelle, reach out, give to Unsilenced Voices, and support the work that you're doing. Thank you so much, Michelle Jewsbury. I want to just keep in touch with you and keep following the great work that you're doing and helping you to spread that into the world. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on the air.
You bet. Have a great day.
You too.
This is Amanda LaPlante. You've been listening to Get Real to Heal on KWRH-LP 92.9 FM. I want to thank our underwriter, AFC Urgent Care. You can find more information about them at afcurgentcare.com/Brentwood or by calling 314-731-6600. 888-888-6265. If you'd like more information from me, find me online at amandalaplant.com or on Facebook at Get Real to Heal, and go make it a great day.